All right, everybody, thanks for joining in. We're doing our round of big box for Blue Card Fireground Ops. This is a break from summertime. We took a little bit of time off because we're busy in the summer, instructors are gone, and this is kind of giving us opportunity to catch our breaths and then rev it back up going into the end of the year. So we're going to do big box this quarter, and then we're going to transition into multifamily going into the holidays until we get ready to start over again in 2021. And I know it's kind of weird that we're not getting you guys in the classroom to do this stuff like we've done in the past. So bear with us here, but we're going to try something a little bit different. Promise this isn't going to be a long death by PowerPoint. Might be like kind of a fast one, but we're going to try to get it to where you're not just watching us stand up here with masks on and our mouths not moving, but instead we're going to get you a close-up version of the information on the screen, and then we're going to try to walk you guys through that stuff. And like we do every time, if you have questions, fire away. Chief Kent and myself will do our best to answer them. We'd like to set up the tactical template for what Central Pierce is going to do when we arrive on scene of a big box fire, specifically at a Lowe's building. That's our building today. And we're going to talk about what our tactical priorities for 3 different types of fire, little building construction, and how we're going to resolve this problem. Like I said before, the IRR sets the play. So we're going to give you guys the IRR and the play that's set, and then how we go through the critical factors to tackle this problem. Fireground Ops. This is our big box, like we do every single time that we review a building type or occupancy type. We start by reviewing our system because there's always room to improve on the system. Doesn't matter what the building type is, our major goals are to have standard conditions and then standard actions to get the standard outcomes. And I know you guys hear that a lot. We can apply that to almost all of our hazard zone management. When it comes to operating in a big box fire, this is going to be very important because the risk-benefit analysis of this type of fire is that it's a great risk. It's a severe risk to firefighters, and so we need to proceed with caution. We size up, we confirm the strategy, and we have an incident action plan. So we take the critical fireground factors and we plug that into our risk management plan, risk a lot to save a lot. That you guys have heard before. We have that risk management plan at Central Pierce. We confirm the strategy, we put into play our incident action plan, and then we attack the tactical priorities. The tactical priorities will change based on the conditions that are at scene, so it is kind of dynamic. That's why our IC1s have to be very good at understanding the critical fireground factors. We will risk our lives a lot to save a savable life. We'll risk our lives a little in a highly calculated manner to save savable property. We'll not risk our lives at all for what is already lost. And in the big box, the life safety risk is to the firefighters. These buildings are inherently dangerous because of the fire load and the building construction when they're on fire. So we will make our decisions based on good information, and we will make them calculated fashion so that we do it as from the safest positions possible. Level 1 staging. This goes into effect as soon as the IRR is set. So if you arrive on scene of a big box on fire, you have smoke showing from the building, and you're not exactly sure where the fire is and you don't know where you want to set up yet, you can still call an on-scene report with the IRR that calls, it lets everybody know that there is a working fire and that they are going to go level 1 while you try to get the most information you can to park in a strategic position. It sounds like you would be going on scene with a working fire, investigating offensive or defensive, and establishing command, and then you can give follow-up information to the IAP after your 360. First engine or truck or BC, whichever one is there first, goes directly to the scene. Our battalion chiefs group, if they hear sirens or see lights in the rearview mirror, they will pull off and park in a position to have an overall global view of the strategy and let our engine and truck company officers do what they do best, which is analyze the critical factors, give in-cab assignments, and then attack the problem systematically. When we talk about our last tactical objective for level 1, be thinking about what that is. Engine companies are water supplies. We are missing that call on our level 1 call outs. We say we're level 1, we're not hearing that we're at hydrants. We do not say we're level 1 no hydrant, because that just throws out the word hydrant, and the fast attacking IC who's busy here's hydrant, so it's confusing. So remember, level 1 or level 1 at a hydrant, and we can't miss those tactical objectives. On-deck deployment model allows us to manage a mayday with the same system we use to manage everything else. That on-deck assignment, you guys have been working really hard at that in our drills. We've seen you guys do well in getting from your engine at level 1 to the assignment of on-deck quickly, because you guys have seen how that transitions into an interior assignment into the hazard zone rapidly. You're the next up to complete the tasks in the hazard zone. You can be used to relieve an existing crew within that division. You're going to either support a position that's already assigned, or you can cover a new position assigned by the IC. In the big box today, one of the things you're going to see us do, like we've done in commercial buildings, is we're going to assign a crew to support fire control. So that would be a position that we are reinforcing. This was a new idea that we brought up when we did the Dairy Queen building for commercial fires a few months back. This is in the system. So for fire ground ops, when you hear engine 60 from command, support engine 64 with long-handled tools, alpha floor 1 for fire control, that support assignment given in the TLO format is telling you to support a company that already has an assignment. That means help them hump hose, manipulate pinch points, bring equipment to engage the fire problem. This is not a backup line. If it were a backup line, you'd be given a TLO that says extend a backup line. When we're recycling, we come out of the building, the first thing we need to do is go to decon. We're still walking out of the building, watching people just unplug their regulators and try to walk up to the division bosses and talk to them. Walk out of the building, go to decon, clean your face pieces off, get everything off your gear. It's okay to stand 20 feet away and yell something to the division boss if it's urgent and you haven't been able to clean. But we really want you guys to clean your faces, unplug, and then come over and talk to the division bosses face to face. The CAN reports, we preach this all the time. Everybody on the fire ground is responsible for knowing a CAN report. Everybody may have the opportunity to use this, from status changes, medic crews and engine companies, to firefighters in trouble having to call a mayday. The information that's relayed to the incident commander, anytime you're within the hazard zone calling to the IC, should be given in the form of a CAN report. If you want practice at what CAN reports are like or how to do one, they're on the Fireground Ops tab under Field Operations in the quick links. You can go see what CAN reports are like and examples of CAN reports. You guys should all be practicing these. That's the review. Let's get into what our tactical priorities are for a big box fire. So there's basically two types of fires that we're going to have in these buildings. And we're going to start off with the offensive tactical priorities. And the reason why I say that is because these buildings are engineered in a way that they do have a heavy fire load, and because of that, they have fire control and fire suppression systems and smoke removal systems. Those systems are engineered to stop the spread of fire, but I want everyone to understand that they don't completely extinguish the fire, and that's where we come in. The fire department's job at a working fire in a big box building is to supplement the suppression systems, overhaul the fires that are still working inside the buildings after they have been knocked down by the suppression systems, and to protect exposures and to support the sprinklers, okay? So in offensive tactical priorities, number one is always fire control, because we know that that's the risk. We manage the risk to responders and to occupants or citizens. We need a water supply with fire control, so the first arriving company is going to take a supply before they do fire control. One of the earliest things we need to do in the big box, once we have water to the fire, whether that's through the sprinkler system or not, once we have water on the fire, we need to horizontally open up this building and start to relieve the smoke that's in there. This is not a building that you can cut a hole in the roof if it's a sprinkler controlled fire, because the pressure has been reduced inside the building. It won't lift. But the square footage of the building itself is so gigantic that the smoke, it will linger. And cold smoke does not move very well. So the earlier we can open the horizontal openings, the easier it is for firefighters to get work done inside. We need to get a roof report early if we're offensive. And when I say roof report, we should be calling it a roof report / a tilt wall report, because we have these large concrete tilt-up walls that can move, and the walls are held in place by the roof system. So when the truck companies are looking at the roof system on the roof report, also look at those walls and determine if the walls are true. Searches. The fire control crew is going to search the corridor on the way to the fire. We're not doing primary searches of the entire building initially. We'll cover the primary and secondary searches once we've cleared a lot of the smoke out of there.
Jeff, can I add something?
Go ahead, Chief.
Hey, you guys, I'd like to add something on the roof report for our truck companies. On this particular building with a tilt-up, lightweight roof, usually membrane type, it's not really designed to walk on a lot. That wasn't the intent of these roofs. It's just a rain covering, holding up some walls. So your roof report on these big boxes for the truck companies are not going to be walking around, cutting inspection holes, and being on the roof itself. It's probably off the stick, or you ladder it with a ground ladder, and you're looking at stability of the walls. You're ticking it, see if there's any hot spots in the roof, and you're more doing a visual inspection of the roof versus some any kind of depressions in the roof, signs of instability. That's what you're looking for. You're not walking it, you're not sounding it. We're not on these roofs. They're not made to be walked on with a crew of 3 to 5. So these big boxes, truck companies just stay off and give us a good roof report on what the visual stability looks like and anything that you notice from there. So
perfect.
Little point of clarification.
Yeah, we're going to get into a little bit of the building construction here coming up, and we'll talk a little more about that roof system. The FDC is going to be one of our early assignments. And right now, we work towards getting a company assigned to support the sprinkler system and tie into FDC, one of the engine companies in the first alarm, and we have 4 engines in our first alarms. Be thinking about that suppression system in the big box fire. That is the key to slowing the progression of the fire. We'll talk more about how much water comes out of those sprinkler heads and how we go about supporting that. The earlier the better. Loss control, when we start flowing lots of water out of these buildings, we're going to have a lot of runoff. We also have some exposures that we need to make sure that we're defending. And then afterwards, when we're doing the overhaul phase, if there's anything in there for loss control, and always firefighter decon, that needs to be at the top of our minds when we're operating at these incidents. You guys hold each other accountable too for the decon stuff. If you're walking out with one of your teammates on your engine company and they're just walking out to unplug, catch them and call them on it. All right? Plug back in, go clean each other off. We want you guys to retire from here and have some longevity when you're done, not because you get 5 years after retirement because you went to Lowe's that was on fire. Who cares? They're going to build another Lowe's, right? We keep each other clean and look out for each other. I covered this initially. The investigating is still an offensive strategy with a full IRR, so we should never hear, we're on scene, smoke, investigating, establishing command. We have a system for that, and for the most part, we're doing excellent at it. All right, so when we're doing big box tactics, we looked at the fixed critical factors. We've got occupancy type, building, and arrangement, and we're going to walk through these critical factors for this building, specifically today, the Lowe's. I want to explain something about how we arrived at a Lowe's and big box. Every time we do these scenarios, we pick a building in our fire district, we go take pictures of it, and we walk through it. And through the system that we're all certified under Blue Card Incident Commander, they're constantly reworking their 5 building types, their occupancy types. And so for big box, their tactical template for big box covers some specific big boxes. These are post-1970s buildings that have a large open span roof system with no firewalls, and they are specifically Lowe's, Home Depots, Walmarts, Sam's Clubs. There's like 4 or 5 different buildings that you guys all would recognize that are across the country. They're pretty standard, okay? So that's the building we're covering today. The variable critical factors at big box incidents. Obviously the fire is the #1 critical factor because it's the biggest risk to us, it's the biggest risk to the building stability, and it's movable, right? It's something that we have to understand the fire behavior and the dynamics of it in order for us to address the rest of these critical factors. What are the resources that we need? What are the life safety issues to deal with? What is the effect of our action having on this incident? And are there any special circumstances to deal with? I want you guys to read along these slides with me, and I'm going to kind of read through the slides. I put a lot of what I wanted to say on these slides with the intent that we're going to read through some of them, ad-lib some comments, and I hope that you guys are reading these, and if you have questions on them, you fire them off, and we can stop and talk about them. Most big box buildings designed and built to hold a lot of retail inventory. There's warehouse storage, there's manufacturing. Medium to large big box buildings, they range in size between 20,000 and 100,000 square feet. You'll see that we're going to have a building type come up in big box. It's going to be a mega big box, and you guys are probably asking questions about the IKEAs and the Whirlpools and those places that have 40 bay doors running down one side of the building. That is a separate building type from this, and that will be another block of instruction that you guys will receive down the road. We have some of the largest buildings in the area here in Frederickson, and I understand that there are concerns with those buildings and how we mitigate those problems. We are addressing it. Okay, I want you guys to be thinking first and foremost about firefighter safety when you arrive to a fire at a big box building. We have a couple things going on. They create longer travel distances, and the contents in there create a lot of obstacles. We're not entering these buildings with dry hose lines. We're always going to advance a charge attack line into the buildings, especially through the smoke, and we know that's going to be time and manpower intensive, so this is not something we're going to expect you to do getting off the engine as the officer with your third. We're going to assign multiple companies to that assignment to pull hose, manage pinch points, things of that nature. Cold smoke fires are just as dangerous as hot smoke fires. Cold smoke can contain elevated amounts of CO, they're ideal H environments, and they will kill you just as much as getting burned, right? The initial efforts of fires at big box buildings are directed to eliminating the fire and controlling the smoke. So like I said earlier, support the sprinkler system. We're going to pull small lines inside once the fire is knocked down by the sprinkler system to check for extension of the fire in the rack storage or whatever's on fire, and we're going to overhaul it. We're going to put the fire out with the hose streams that we have that the sprinkler system's not able to reach, right? The IC quickly organizes by assigning divisions. Those responsibilities are given to later arriving chief officers. These officers will control access in and out of the hazard zone. You've heard me talk at the other commercial building classes about firefighter creep, and that we stand around outside in the defensive condition for a while and the fire gets knocked down, and then you can see there's a little bit of fire here, and firefighters naturally say, if I can just stand over here, I might be able to put that out, right? And you get yourself in trouble because you get into collapse zones and things like that. So the division bosses help to control that stuff. The occupancy type. Big box buildings contain lots of contents. Fire load will vary by the occupancy type. These large commercial buildings are single story. Sometimes they have mezzanines, sometimes they have office spaces, sometimes they have second floors, but they look like a single story building. Many of these buildings have shelving units. They can be 10 to 20 feet high, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the types of shelving units that are in Lowe's and the dangers that they pose to us. The value varies based on the occupancy type and the stuff that's inside of the building and where the building is. We've talked in the commercial building setting about having to determine the value side of the building and what side of the building we're willing to risk and write off, right? And then how do we protect the value sides? In the big box building, it's all one building, it's all one big open space. So the value may be in the exposures that are located close to this building. The status of normal business hours, it's predictable when occupied. They're mostly open during the normal business hours, but you might have manufacturing and warehouses that have people working all hours of the day. I know working out here in Frederickson on Engine 60, we're going to these manufacturing and warehouses at nighttime. We always tie in with the security officers. They generally can take us to the location of the fire control rooms and help us gather information to determine what our IAP is. Make sure when you arrive on scene, if those people are there, don't just blow past them. Grab a hold of that person and get some information. Time and use, like I said, mercantile, manufacturing, storage, and retail. And the loss control depends on the occupancy type and what's housed in there. So here's our critical factors for the building. Size, age, interior arrangement, construction type, condition, value. Are there compartments? Are there openings, shaft, and channels when they do add-ons and things like that? We have these shafts and chases inside the buildings that can hide fire extension, and they can create problems for us. We're going through the post-incident review on the Kirshner fire, and we've got the rain roof, and we've got that same under fire conditions. When you look up next time you go into a Home Depot or a Lowe's and you see those running W metal ceilings, the roof systems, understand that just because they're metal doesn't mean that they're going to do any better. They're still lightweight. Okay, so these buildings, that roof system is It's no different than any other type of lightweight building other than the fact that it's huge, and when it comes down, the walls are coming with it. Metal parallel cord trusses replace the wide-span wood trusses. They're quicker to build and cheaper to install. Hopefully when you guys are walking around, you're looking up when you're inside these buildings. Even on your days off, you can see some interesting things like their smoke removal systems, stuff like that. Tilt slab walls, they're poured on site. After they're cured, the walls are hoisted in place attached to the stem wall. Long tormentor bars, you guys have all seen those when they're building these buildings. They're all leaned up against the wall because that wall is standing straight up. It's not attached to the roof yet. Once the roof system is on, then they can take all those tormentor bars down. Masonry walls reinforced with steel and concrete. They make a strong building. It doesn't rely on the roof for the stability of the walls. And knowing the difference between these two walls, it will affect our collapse zones when we talk about where we park our apparatus. A general rule of thumb, like we have in our policies, is 1.5 times the height of the wall will keep you safe for the failure of a concrete tilt slab wall and a masonry wall, because the masonry walls, when they fall down, they can explode debris outward. So continuing on with the fixed critical factor for building, the collapse zone of tilt slab walls is 1.5 times the height of the wall. You're going to see in the Lowe's when we show you the pictures, there's some spots on the Bravo and the Charlie side of Lowe's that you cannot get back there and be outside of the collapse zone. So when we start looking at our assignments in defensive operations or where we want to park apparatus, those may be off limits. Masonry walls generally have smaller collapse zones. They can send debris their full height or further. Depends on what caused the wall to collapse. Here's your view of the running W wide-span parallel cord trusses. So most of these big box structures will utilize a panelized roof system. The main roof structure is built out of large steel I-beams and glulam. Secondary structural members called purlins attach to the main beams and support the panelized steel trusses, and the truss panels can be 500 square feet or more. Bottom line with these roof systems is that there's nothing holding them up but the walls, and when they have direct flame impingement or excessive heat, they can fail rapidly, causing these large walls to come down as well. This creates a severe risk to firefighters operating in and around these buildings when they're on fire. The other thing about the flat roofs on these buildings, when we transition to defensive operations, they're also not designed to hold the weight of the amount of water that we may be flowing on a defensive op. So if you're putting a ton of water up on the roof of this building and it's not going into a hole, you can expect that eventually that's going to affect the integrity of that roof system, and it could also cause a catastrophic failure. The arrangement for a big box commercial occupancy, they're built using several different construction methods: tilt walls, metal skin walls, masonry walls. They're usually a single story, but they can have some office spaces or mezzanines. They have flat panelized roofs that are used to cover the large floor area. And these buildings are generally not subdivided, and they don't have firewalls. For the arrangement, if they're retail occupancies, they typically have the back of the store devoted to inventory and storage, offices, and employee break rooms, and they're generally more difficult to enter. Storage facilities have high rack storage with aisleways that are wide enough for forklifts. They have different types of rack storage in them, and they present a danger to us working inside in limited visibility. Manufacturing occupancies will be very specific to each building, and they can be compartmentalized. The interior size and arrangement of these type of occupancies limits the distance crews can advance lines into the structure. Some of these buildings are over 500 feet deep, and these are for the big box Lowe's type buildings, not the megas. So if you think about that, with our rules of air management, buildings that are 500 feet deep, the only way we're going to be able to access them is to find the right entry point and park there. More arrangement factors: access, arrangement, and distance of the exposures, the combustibility of the exposures, and the value of the exposures. What's the most dangerous direction the fire could spread? What is the fire's effect on those exposures? Are there any barriers or obstructions to getting to them? The capability of moving apparatus, like I mentioned, the Charlie side of this Lowe's and the Bravo side of this Lowe's are very tight, and they're stacked with, there's a fire load behind that building as well. So having a tactical position behind that building is probably not an option. Or is there multiple buildings as part of one building? Tactical considerations when making access to the rear or the Charlie side of the building, like I mentioned with Lowe's, it's difficult back there to park any apparatus and be outside the collapse zone. So if you are going back there, park on a corner, Bravo Charlie or Charlie Delta. There's power lines and utilities. There's heavy security doors, sometimes roll-up doors. Once there's water on the fire and we decide to horizontally ventilate these buildings, getting all those roll-up doors open is a great way to naturally ventilate. You generally need a truck company to do the forcible entry back there. And make sure you cover the key tactical positions in the front of the building if you can, prior to making assignments to units in the rear, just because the access is easier. There's generally more parking and more room to stay out of the collapse zone. Your fire hydrants are also accessible out front and allow you to gain a water supply and still park an ample distance away from the building. Consider the size for big box. The length of time it takes to advance attack lines into these buildings is key. We operate off our work cycles, and like we've talked about in the past at Central Pierce, we're putting our averages together for how our companies, how much work we can get done in a work cycle, but we're roughly between 8 and 12 minutes. And so the amount of time it takes you to advance that line inside, you need to have built-in time to return, exit the building, and then have your emergency air, so we work in the rule of thirds. A building over 500 feet deep, packed with contents, and a 12-minute working time for an SCBA are fixed factors that the IC will have to consider based on the entry points and how many crews they assign in to get the work done. Critical factors, a variable factor of fire. The size, extent, location, the stage of fire development, the fire load, the direction of travel, the way that the fire is traveling, how long the building or the occupancy has been involved, and the fire load. What is it that's burning inside the building? How do we access the fire, and what type of perimeter do we have? For the perimeter, we're going to be identifying where the hazard zone is as the fire progresses in this building. And so that is a key factor in determining fire spread to exposures as well. Critical factors for these type of situations: how much area is covered in smoke? Think about the cubic square feet inside a Lowe's and how much smoke it takes to fill that building. And once it's full of smoke, how does that affect our ability to get to the fire? How deep into the building is the fire, and what are the access points to the building? So we're going to really heavily rely on sprinkler systems in these buildings to do the majority of the work for us. Sprinkler-controlled fires in the buildings with lots of rack storage can leave the fire smoldering within the rack, and that's where we come in. The sprinklers keep it from extending but cannot completely extinguish the fire, so we have to take hand lines inside and help with that process. We're going to be the ones that put the stream of water in the right place. So distribution is going to be our key tactic in helping overhaul that. Big box sprinkler heads typically flow between 90 and 120 gallons a minute, depending on the fuel load and its configuration. Most big box sprinkler systems are designed for a max discharge of 14 to 16 sprinkler heads going off at one time off of one riser. So to put it in perspective, if you have 16 sprinkler heads that are flowing 120 gallons a minute, you could be applying almost 2,000 gallons of water directly into the fire area. So think about that for a second. What hand lines are we taking inside a building for offensive firefights that are going to outmatch that? This is a very well-designed suppression system. It's built like that for a reason. That's why we want to supplement it early. We're not going to be bringing hand lines in that are going to outdo 2,000 gallons a minute. Our job is to bring a maneuverable hand line in so that we have the water distribution and maneuverability to be able to overhaul the fire once the sprinkler system has knocked it down and put it in check. I want you guys to consider that a fire in the big box building that is not contained by the sprinkler system has a 100% chance of total fire loss. So I'm going to say that again. When you're arriving on scene of an incident and you do not have a cold smoke fire in that building, you have fire and smoke under pressure, or angry smoke, or dark black smoke moving in velocity, there is a 100% chance of total fire loss in that building. So how does that plug into our risk management model? Rules of thumb for attacking the fire: max distance. We're going 150 feet inside the building. That's tied to air management. Now, if you have a straight shot into the building and you can push 160 feet, are you going to get written up? No, but we need you guys to be tying that distance to how much time you need to get in and get out, all right? You must be on a charged hose line. We're not laying dry lines into the buildings. I think everyone that works here is well aware of that now. We're going to support the sprinkler system early. The majority of the fires in these buildings are cold smoke fires. Make sure company officers are taking thermal imaging cameras inside with them. I don't know how many of you guys have been inside of one of these large open spaces when there's a fire in them and there's a lot of smoke. It is difficult to get your bearings. You cannot do just left or right wall searches. You need to have a reference point. The best reference point that we have is our hose line. Using search rope is a dangerous tactic that we're not going to use here. So charged hose lines give us the ability to get in and manipulate the hose line in a way to find our way back out if we become disoriented. The fire control team goes directly to the seat of the fire, and they only search the corridor en route from the door to the fire. We want the ladder companies to get our roof reports early, the roof and the tilt wall reports, and then we're going to open horizontal openings as early as possible to start removing some of the smoke to improve our working conditions. The vast majority of big box occupancies do not pose a very big life hazard risk. They pose a life hazard risk to us, generally not the population. These buildings are protected with smoke detectors, fire alarms, and automatic sprinkler systems. The occupants of these buildings are awake and moving around. In the event of a fire, the occupants are quickly notified and directed to leave. The employees of Lowe's are assigned corridors in which they're responsible for the employees and the customers that are in those corridors in the event of fire. They're responsible to evacuate all of them to a specific location where they all have a meeting point outside the building. They're also instructed to have the manager meet the first arriving fire suppression units and tell them that they have cleared the building. With that being said, we treat this like we treat all of our other occupancy types when it comes to primary searches and the life hazard variable factor risk. We confirm that ourselves through our tactical priorities and our assignments. So when we do that, the rescue order, if you do have somebody inside, you start with the most endangered people, then you get the biggest group of people outside, then you check the remainder of the fire area, and then we search the exposures. Firefighters represent the biggest life hazard associated with fires in a big box building. Be thinking about that. When you get on scene and the adrenaline starts to flow a little bit and your vision starts to tunnel a little bit because a large building with a lot going on is burning, that's the time to take a deep breath and slow down. Be professional fire officers, gather good information, and make sound tactical decisions based on the critical fireground factors. What do you guys think is the number one safety hazard for firefighters operating in this large building? Running out of air. Firefighters are not getting burned alive inside of these big box fires. They're becoming lost and disoriented in cold smoke fires, and they're not managing their air correctly. Do not leave the hose line. Do not go in further than you need to go. Do not separate from your crews. High rack shelving risk. We've got two types of shelving inside of Lowe's. We've got cantilevered shelving, and we have box frame shelving. They both present a risk to us inside. The hard part is that if you're inside a cold smoke fire, it may be difficult to tell what type of storage rack you're standing next to until you get really close to it. Sprinkler activation will triple the weight of any material on the shelves. It's generally twice the rated load of the shelving. Shelving is engineered to hold a certain amount of weight. Most shelving systems do not have a safety margin to include waterlogged stock. A few sprinkler heads can quickly produce enough water to double the weight of the stock on the shelving. It's not uncommon for whole sections of shelving to fail. Consider areas where the sprinklers are loading stock with water as collapse zones. Stay away from them. Cantilevered shelving will fail faster than box frame shelving under the weight of the added water. Cantilevered rack storage systems are the most hazardous rack type. So think about when you go into Lowe's or Home Depot, what a cantilevered shelving system looks like. It's the ones when you walk down the lumber aisle and you see large stacks of plywood that are sticking on shelving that just have arms sticking out on both sides. The weight of that material is what's keeping those shelves in place and the shelving system up. They do not have shelving supports. They're open in the front. They facilitate loading and unloading using forklifts or similar equipment. The load capacity yield of a 16-inch cantilever column is up to 14,300 pounds per side of the column. So obviously that will kill you if it falls down. Most 4 by 8 foot sheets of lumber and individual lumber pieces are banded into 2 or 3 foot high stacks. A 2 foot stack of plywood or OSB weighs 1,200 to 1,500 pounds. If you run into a stack of that stuff and it is getting saturated with flowing sprinkler heads, beware. Once the sprinkler system activates, the material on the shelving becomes waterlogged and the shelving system fails. There have been several significant firefighter injuries and line of duty deaths associated with the failures of these cantilevered shelving systems. Let's talk about getting on the roof like Chief Kent alluded to. What's the risk versus the gain? Well, the roof operations, it's pretty simple. Don't get on the roof of a big box building if there's an active fire below it, because the fire is either doing one of two things. It's either being contained by the sprinkler system and the fire is producing cold smoke fire. There's not enough pressure inside that compartment to lift out of a ventilation hole. The fire has overwhelmed the sprinkler system and the building structural elements are being exposed to direct heat or flame impingement. If the exposed structural elements have not already failed, they are guaranteed to fail soon. Again, I said this earlier in the slide, but I put it in here twice to repeat to you guys that any fire in a big box building that is not contained by the sprinkler system has a 100% chance of a total fire loss. Just think about that when you're coming up with your incident action plan. We talk about the fire protection systems because they do play a vital role in the initial suppression of this fire. We're going to need to find the fire control room. That's going to be one of the assignments of an engine company in the first or second alarm, depending on what you have initially. So when we do talk about that assignment of the fire control room, if you're an engine company that gets assigned to find the fire control room, your job is going to be to get into the fire control room, shut the alarm off so that the crews that are working inside are not impeded their radio traffic by a fire alarm. Locate the risers that are controlling the sprinkler heads that are flowing and man those risers. When we do get lines in place to take care of the fire problem, to assist the sprinkler system in overhaul, then we can then radio to command to have those risers shut down so we can work through overhaul and stop waterlogging the product. When you are in that position, do not leave the risers once you've shot them down. You're to stay at that position for the duration of the incident through overhaul until the incident is under control. The reason for that is many buildings have been burned to the ground during the overhaul process when you use forklifts and things to remove products from the shelving to overhaul it, and overhauling that product creates more BTUs than we can handle with our 1 3/4 lines, and we need to turn the sprinkler system back on. In that case, we use the company that's assigned to the fire control room to do so. If you do not know what a fire suppression system, a sprinkler system pump looks like, or what you should do in that room, we've attached a video to the Fireground Ops tab under Field Operations that was sent to us by training that Chris Craig did an excellent job explaining some of the parts and how they work in a fire control room. And that is on the info portal. If you need help getting to it, we'll get it to you. Company officers and engineers, it is your responsibility to know what to do when you get assigned the fire control room at the incident. It's another class that we're not going to go into here today, but if it were me and I was thinking of all the assignments I may get in one of these types of fires, I would do the research to make sure I was prepared when I got that assignment. We've provided the link for you as a resource. Locate staff and security to get up-to-date information on the location of the fire control room. Most big box sprinkler systems are supplied by pressurized domestic water source using water mains between 4 to 8 inches. The sprinkler systems that don't have their own pumps to boost the incoming water pressure are going to rely on us, the fire department, to boost the pressure with our fire apparatus by pumping the FDCs. Big box sprinkler heads typically flow between 90 to 120 gallons a minute of water depending on the fuel load and its configuration. Again, this system is designed for a max discharge of 14 to 16 sprinkler heads going off at one time, off one riser, 2,000 gallons a minute. So let's supplement that early. It's on here a third time. Any fire that's not contained by the sprinkler system, 100% chance of a total fire loss. Once sufficient hand lines are put in place and the fire is under control, then we can shut down the risers to the sprinkler heads that are flowing so we can limit water damage and the threat of internal collapse. So when you guys are reviewing this, here's the full slide on the rules for shutting down the sprinkler system. I know you guys are going to get this video on your own time now, so spend some time reviewing it with your crew. Once the fire area has the appropriate number of lines and personnel in the fire area, the risers protecting the involved area should be isolated and shut down. The control room officer and his or her crew will be responsible for identifying which riser feeds the section of the sprinkler system that is controlling the fire. Once given the order to shut down, shut off only the risers in the affected area of the building while leaving all other risers fully open when possible. Once the riser has been shut down, it must be manned throughout the rest of the overhaul operation in case the fire flares up. Once the sprinkler system has been secured or shut down, the IC must always ensure that there are eyes on the fire area at all times until the fire has been completely 100% extinguished. There are no exceptions to this rule. Okay, let's talk offensive versus defensive strategies. When you arrive on scene as the first engine company, you have light smoke showing, lazy, not under pressure. Sprinkler-controlled fire, cold smoke. The structure appears stable. The RP is on location and gives info to the type of fire and the accountability of occupants. These things need to be present for us to determine that we're in an offensive strategy. Most importantly, this is a sprinkler-controlled fire. Here's some considerations for the first arriving engine or ladder. I'd suggest you drive the 360 if it's possible. You're going to look for things like the water gong to hear that the sprinkler system is flowing. You're going to check the man doors and the bay doors as you're driving around and look for indications that that's where the heads are closest to. If there's water flowing out of the doors, it gives you a pretty good idea that that might be a good place to start. You can open those doors, use your thermal imaging camera to check and look for heat signatures. IRR and establish command. Tie in with the RP or the manager or the security personnel. Secure a water supply. We're going to have you build an attack team prior to entry to support fire control, just like we've done in the other commercial occupancies. It's unrealistic to expect 2 people to manage hose lines around fire load into this large square footage. And then assign an on-deck crew. We need to get a roof tilt wall report from the truck. We're going to assign an engine to secure their own supply and support the FDC. We're going to assign an engine to the fire control room to silence the alarm and manage the risers. We're going to do a command transfer. IC2 is going to want to establish division assignments as early as possible so that we can manage work rest cycles within those divisions, and we can also keep accountability for crews in and out of the hazard zone. Let's talk defensive strategy. The fire has overrun the sprinkler system. The structure has had unknown time of flame and heat impingement, causing unknowns with the integrity of the building. There's obvious compromising of the building's integrity is a sign that we should be defensive. Flames through the roof, thick black or dark colored smoke under pressure, hot smoke, radiant heat on arrival, no water flowing out of the doorways closest to the fire. That may give you an indication that the sprinkler system is being overwhelmed. When we assign a company to that FDC early, support it. If there's no change in conditions, we're defensive. Defensive considerations for the first arriving engine or ladder company. Slow down. Drive a 360 if possible. Park outside the established collapse zone 1.5 times the height. Provide an IRR that confirms the defensive strategy and establish command. Upgrade to a second alarm. Take your own water supplies and initiate master stream fire control measures. Identify exposures, and we're going to identify where the hazard zone is. We're going to establish cutoffs, the value end of the building. In these buildings, because it is one giant compartment, we don't have specific value ends of the building to deal with. Once that whole compartment is filled with smoke, it is an entire fire loss. Define the hazard zone. We're going to let all companies know where the danger zones are. So we have collapse zones identified and any other information that we need relayed. Search the exposures. So on this Lowe's, the closest exposure that we need to worry about on the Charlie side, there is an adult living facility right behind it. And when you have fire through a roof, a defensive condition to this building, you may have embers and things and wind that can cause problems for that high life exposure on the Charlie side. So assigning crews to the Charlie side exposure control is an important assignment. Assign divisions. Announce exclusionary zones with emergency traffic and PARs, and we're going to talk through emergency traffic here towards the end. So here's the strategic shift mechanics. Let's say you arrive to the cold smoke fire. You set up everything correctly, you slow down, you make tactical decisions to get inside this building, and you transfer command. And IC2 arrives, and when they get to the scene of the fire, they determine, based on the strategy, that they want to change it from offensive to defensive. When they decide to do that, there's a specific shift mechanics that needs to take place. The first thing that we will do is contact the companies that are interior and tell them, for example, Engine 72 from command, have your company withdraw from the structure. We're going to change strategies. Make sure they confirm that order and they withdraw. Once you've contacted each company that's inside, given them the order to withdraw, you're going to clear dispatch and ask for emergency tones. They're going to transmit the emergency tones. We'll announce to all hazard zone units that we're shifting to a defensive strategy. All units either withdraw or abandon the structure. Again, withdraw the structure is take your tools and equipment with you. Abandon the structure is leave everything in place and get out as fast as you can. What we've done in the past is everybody gets outside and then they call command with their PARs and they say, Engine 72 is PAR, unsolicited. That's actually incorrect. What we need to do is stay off the radio as much as possible so we leave that airway open for any possible maydays. So how do we do the roll call? Well, the roll call is driven by the incident commander. All companies will confirm that they're PAR when the IC calls them to confirm. So companies, on your own, you'll withdraw from the building. The company officers and the medic crews will make sure that they are PAR. And then you'll wait to be called to let IC know that you're PAR. What happens if you're not PAR? Then you have a mayday. You're able to get out on your mayday because we didn't clog up the radio with a bunch of unsolicited PARs. Dispatch repeats the emergency traffic report exactly as it was said. Let's talk level 2 staging. Dispatch will notify the level 2 units of the tactical channel and the staging location. The first arriving engine company officer will become the level 2 staging officer. It's not the ladder and it's not the truck or the medic unit. It's just the engine company. So if a truck gets there first and they start organizing things, they'll give that to the first arriving engine company officer. The level 2 staging officer will communicate with command on the designated level 2 channel. They'll let them know that they are taking level 2 staging. Once arriving at level 2 staging, the company officer of the unit will report in person to the level 2 staging officer. The crew will then stand by with their unit, with the crew intact, with the apparatus warning lights turned off until they are assigned to incident site duties or released from the scene. All level 2 communication between the staging officer and the crews will be face-to-face. Arriving chief staff officer should assume level 2 staging officer and relieve the engine so that the engine can be assigned into the hazard zone as soon as possible. Okay, so the level 2 staging officer duties. Notify the IC on the assigned channel that you've arrived. Verify the companies that are available at the staging location. Determine from the IC what they want the minimum number of companies are to be kept in level 2. Contact IC when the below established minimum resources level 2 staging occur. Maintain a current list of resources in level 2. Maintain a list of companies deployed to the incident site and their assignments from the level 2 staging area. And then relay the assignment of the units from the IC via face-to-face communications in the TLO format to those companies. So the assignments from IC2 may come to level 2 staging officer and say, send me 2 engines to level 1 staging. Or they may say, send me 1 engine to Division Bravo. They'll be working for Battalion 7-2. If that's the case, the division boss will receive an engine company directly from level 2 staging. The level 2 staging officer will walk over to that company officer and say, hey, Engine 60, you're a report to the Bravo division for working for Battalion 72. They will say, received, face-to-face, get their crew, drive in, spot out of the way, and go to work for Division Bravo. This keeps the radio channels open for the primary reason that we need Mayday crews to be able to get out if necessary. All right. When you guys review this stuff, if you have any questions on it, go ahead and you can forward an email to your battalion chiefs through the chain of command. If they can't answer that, then we will work to get them the information, and we're going to get into some sets and reps. All right, so for sets and reps, we're going to walk you through 3 different types of fires. But I want you guys to be thinking about the 2 types of fires that are going to take place in this building that are going to help us determine what strategy we're going to be in. So we either have a sprinkler controlled fire that puts us in an offensive strategy where we have light smoke, a cold smoke type fire, and the sprinkler has done the majority of fire control. We need to take lines inside to mop it up and overhaul and finish extinguishment. The second type of fire is one that has completely overrun the sprinkler system, and is evidenced by dark smoke, pressurized smoke, or flames visible, and heat. And so like we've done for all of these building types, is we walk you through starting from the beginning with the IRR and analyzing the critical factors and how we determine what our assignments are going to be based on those. And so we're going to go through and set up the play for Central Pierce. The IRR determining the play, which gets everybody on the same page to be able to predict what their assignments are going to be. So when I arrive on scene of this building, this is the Lowe's that's on South Hill. And if I have light smoke showing like this and it's not developing under pressure, it's the middle of the day, the first thing I'm going to try to do is look for a reporting party from the Lowe's manager, somebody that has information and maybe done a reconnaissance of where the fire is, what's on fire, and if there's any accountability for the employees and the customers to help us determine the life safety aspect. So once I've done that, what we want you guys to do is take a deep breath and slow down, right? The fire is being tamed by the sprinkler system. We're going to help support that. And so there's no urgency for us. We need to do this systematically and calculated. So we have to get good fire ground information, and we have to take a look at this entire building. So it's okay to go on scene of this fire with an IRR that says that you're investigating in the offensive strategy. So let's walk through how that sounds. Fire comm from Engine 7-2. Engine 7-2 is on scene of a large one-story Lowe's. We have a working fire. We're going to be out investigating in the offensive strategy. Let's upgrade to a second alarm with staging at the South Hill Mall on a different tactical channel. I'll be establishing 39th Command. Now I'm going to start to do a drive around 360, and the IRR, by being said over the radio, puts level 1 staging into play. So everyone now that's arriving needs to stage at their last tactical objective. The last tactical objective for the engine company is water supplies. The last tactical objective for the medic crews is to park out of the way and be able to respond if you need, if you have medical or traumatic injury or firefighter injury, or we'll put you to work as a support function. The ladder companies, your last tactical objectives are different access and egress points so that you can park on corners of the buildings for defensive ops or roof reports. So we'll start with our 360 around the building as we're doing a drive. I still have light smoke showing, and it's a haze out front. This tells me that we do have a sprinkler controlled fire. It's cold smoke. A little bit of smoke coming out of the lumber center with the doors open. Now, with all these doors open, we do have some flow paths, but the reason that we can tell it's a cold smoke fire is because as we're doing our 360, the fire is not progressing. The sprinkler system has controlled it even though there are flow paths open. Now we look down the Bravo side. My concern on the Bravo side is our access. If we're thinking about parking apparatus within 1.5 times the collapse zone, the Bravo side may not be a point of a position for attack. So now we're on to Bravo Charlie, and what do we notice about Bravo Charlie? We have some access issues with the fence. We've got fire load outside that's in the way of our parking. If I look at the height of the walls, I can see where the downspouts are, and I know that I have a large parapet up there above the roof. I also have maybe some room to park apparatus if I push it up close to the curb. Just to the left of the screen, up that little hillside there, is the parking lot for one of the senior living facilities. And so if this Charlie side is not a good place to park apparatus, for Charlie side exposure protection, we may go up the hill and park in the parking lot of the exposure. Now I'm on to the Charlie Delta corner. We have the loading bays, and this is where it connects to the garden center. So we have more fire load of a different type and an exterior attachment to the building, but there's ample parking over here for if you need to set up a ladder truck, or you want to tie into a hydrant and you have room to park outside the collapse zone on the corner. Now to drive from the Charlie side up the Delta side back to Alpha, again, you're tight, as not very much room to operate there, and you do have fire load stacked up against that fence. So here we are back to Alpha. Now I'm going to give my 360 follow-up report. FireCom from 39th Command. 360 is complete. There's one story from Charlie, no basement. We have a change to the IAP. We're going to be taking a water supply and deploying lines to Alpha side for fire control. We're still in the offensive strategy, and accountability is Engine 72 on the Alpha side. Now our plan of attack for that first arriving engine company is that we're going to take our own supply. We're going to start to deploy lines to go through the Alpha side front doors. That's the easiest place to access it, and there was nothing on the 360 that gave any indication that the fire was in a different location. I'm going to take a thermal imaging camera with me. I'm going to take a hose line to the front door, and my next assignment is going to be to get a crew to support me for fire control. So next company that goes level 1, I'm going to assign them to support Engine 72 on Alpha for fire control. Now we're building our team to go inside. We still can't go inside until we have 2 out. So what's the next assignment? Next engine company that goes level 1, we're going to assign them to extend another line off Engine 72 to the Alpha side for on deck. Now, we have the ability to go interior. We have assigned our 2 out. We've built a team of 5 if it's an engine company officer third plus another engine company of 3, so we can manipulate the hand line. We'll take an 1 3/4 line inside the front door and proceed with caution. If you feel heat inside of this building, that should be a red flag that the sprinkler system is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, and we need to reconsider our actions. So now we can make our way inside the building and try to locate where the fire is. When you're in these large buildings, your best tool that you can use is your thermal imaging camera, help you identify where the heat and smoke, heat and flames are. Truck company arrives on scene. Assignment for the truck company. If you noticed where you want them on the 360, you can assign them a parking spot, or you can say in the TLO format, spot to your advantage for a roof report. Truck companies will then take a look at the roof from a corner, identify if the roof is stable and if the tilt walls are stable, and then they'll call back command with the roof report. The next assignment, we want to supplement that FDC. So if another engine company is level 1, we're going to assign them to take their own water supply, support the FDC on whatever side that it was, or if you don't know where it is, you can tell them to locate the FDC, take their own water supply, and support it. That engine company is then going to tie into the FDC, and they're going to notify command when they're ready to pump to it. The next assignment in the alarm is to assign a company to, that's level 1, to report to the fire control room. And that company is going to report to the fire control room to silence the alarm and to man the sprinkler system risers. Those are our initial assignments. At that point, we're looking for the battalion chief to arrive on scene to assume command, and they will continue to monitor those tactics and validate those tactics off of that offensive strategy and determine if that's still the correct strategy. This is, when you guys see this fire, as a cold smoke fire that's sprinkler controlled, still beware that this is a prolonged event. The work cycles and the amount of crews and resources that are going to be needed to deal with this problem are going to take quite a few hours. And just the overhaul process, evacuating the smoke, removing whatever is on fire still from the building to the rack storage to the floor and overhauling it. But it should be done slowly and systematically, and we use this fire suppression system to our advantage. Pretty straightforward. The nice thing about the big box fire is it's a big building with a lot of square footage and a lot of fire load, but tactically these should be some of the easiest fires that we encounter, because the life safety risk aspect of it is just keeping ourselves safe and attacking this fire from the safest, most appropriate position. And there's already a fire suppression system built in that we just have to support, right? Okay. Moving on to the next fire. We see a difference in the smoke here. I'm arriving on scene of Lowe's, and now I've got dark black smoke moving out of the building. This doesn't change anything for me on my initial assignment. I'm just going to get the IRR out in place and get everybody to go level 1 and upgrade the alarm. Firecom Engine 7-2. I'm on scene of a large one-story Lowe's. We have a working fire. We're going to be investigating. In the offensive strategy, upgrade the alarm, second alarm staging at the South Hill Mall on a separate frequency. I'm establishing 39th Avenue Command. Now, because this is all I can see, the red flag goes up that I have dark black smoke moving out under pressure. I'm still calling it an offensive strategy because I'm investigating. I need to get more information. I'm not committing anyone to the hazard zone yet. I'm going to go find out what we've got. I'm going to try to tie in with the RP, make sure that they've confirmed that everybody is outside of the building. They have a location of where the fire is and maybe what's burning. Now that I drive down to the side where the lumber opening is and we're on the Alpha Bravo corner and I have more dark black smoke pushing out under pressure, this causes me some grave concern, right? Think about the square footage in there and the dark color of the smoke and how the entire box is filled with this pressurized smoke. This is now a problem that has overrun the fire suppression system that's built in. This should indicate to me that we should be in a defensive strategy. Anybody want to go inside that building? I hope not. I hope when everybody sees that, they recognize that the contents of this building, whether they're on fire or not, are a total loss. Even just based on smoke damage and heat alone, this building and all of its contents is now garbage. You can be rest assured that this is 100% total fire loss. Now the goal is to keep firefighters, responders safe and protect exposures. Bravo side, I've got a building now that has impingement of flame and heat, and I don't know for how long. This caused me concern of the integrity of the building and where I want responders and apparatus to be parked. It's going to be very important that we identify the hazard zone and understand where our collapse zones are. Now I'm on the Bravo Charlie side. I see the majority of the smoke pushing out the Alpha side. We know why that is because that's where the openings are. Flow paths are on Alpha. Charlie Delta, same thing. Again, good place for master stream positioning. If we get to the point where we determine that the best distribution of a master stream is from the air, then this is probably a good position. But let's think about where we really want to be putting that water. Traditionally, the roof that's there, when it's in place, it's to keep water out of the building. So if we're putting water from up top, from the Charlie Delta corner, is that the best distribution of water? It might not be until the roof is completely gone. Okay, so now we got defensive fire conditions. It's okay because the 360 report allows me to change my incident action plan. And I'm able to do that with companies just sitting level 1. It's given me time to get good fire ground information and then make the change. Firecom from 39th Command. 360 complete. There's one story from Charlie. There's no basement. We have a change to the IAP. We have defensive fire conditions. We're going to be spotting on the Alpha side with our own water supply and deploying master streams to Alpha for fire control in the defensive strategy. Accountability is Engine 72 on the Alpha side. That signifies to everybody now that we're defensive. So now my job as IC1 is to ensure that the assignments I give have to be very specific in the TLO format because I need companies to park where I know is best for them to park based on the information I got on my 360. Would it benefit me to assign a company to park on the Bravo side when I know that that's within the collapse zone? No. So I'm going to use the corners to my advantage. I know where the entryways are to the building. I know that the roof is still intact because I don't have fire blowing out of it. So the best position to put a lot of water into that building is from the Alpha side, and it's from down below, right? I want a distribution of water through those front doors, not onto the roof. So, defensive strategy, taking my own supply, deploying master streams to Alpha. Next company goes level 1. I'm going to have them report to the Alpha Bravo corner, take their own water supply, deploy a master stream to the Alpha side for fire control. Now I'm going to be hitting it on 2 fronts from a defensive position. Systematically build into the defensive op in that manner, positioning units based on the need. The next place that I can position units is probably going to be where? I can go Charlie Delta is a good parking spot. Or I can just go to the Alpha Delta corner, right? And we're on the Alpha side because I don't have a lot of fire behavior on Charlie yet. and I have to force those doors, and Charlie's not a great spot to park. The key here is that we've upgraded the alarm. We know this is going to be resource heavy. We're going to assign companies to the different sides of the buildings as this fire progresses, and then we need the chief officers to arrive so that we can assign divisions. The divisions are going to be important early because we have to manage the collapse zones. We have to limit firefighter creep towards the building when this thing starts to get knocked down, if it does. And we also need to assign companies from that second alarm to go check the exposures, especially the one that's up top on the Charlie side. If we've got heat, smoke, embers, and wind blowing towards Charlie, and we have a high life hazard building behind it, we might want to consider putting a company back there to protect that exposure, maybe two if we decide we need to evacuate any portion of it. Okay? The setup for the first arriving IC is water supplies, identify the hazard zone, don't assign any companies to park within the collapse zones, and get master streams on multiple sides. Scenario number 3. Engine 72 is arriving on scene. It kind of looks like the first fire, right? We've got the light smoke. It's not really under pressure. I'm going to tie in with the reporting party, find out where the fire is, if they know what's on fire, where it is in the building. I'm going to see if they have any accountability for all the employees and the occupants that are inside. And I'm going to establish command and do the IRR to set up level 1 staging. Excellent. Okay, so the lady from Lowe's says that they do have accountability for all the employees, and they are outside on the far west end of the parking lot. We are still going to do our searches en route to the fire control team in that corridor, but at least we have an understanding that somebody's keeping accountability. As chief officers show up or other companies, we may be able to assign them to verify that. So again, I've determined this is a sprinkler-controlled fire. My initial thought is it's an offensive strategy, but I want to establish level 1 staging until I can get more information. Firecom engine 72. I'm on scene of a large 1-story Lowe's. We have a working fire. We're going to be investigating in the offensive strategy, upgrade to a second alarm with parking at the South Hill Mall on a different frequency. I'm going to be establishing 39th Avenue Command. Now, I'm going to start my 360. I've got the same amount of smoke. I'm still thinking about this being an offensive attack, and I'm looking for water gong, water coming out of the doorways, any indications with my thermal imaging camera of where the fire might be. And I don't have any changes so far. We systematically do our 360s on this building just like we do in the residentials, where we start looking for spaces below grade, any fire or smoke below the building, and we systematically work our way up to floor 1 and then the roof. I don't see any changes. We get back to alpha, and now things look a little bit different. I do have a little bit change in smoke, but my thought is I'm going to still build my attack lines. I'm going to set everything up to be prepared to augment this sprinkler system as the first arriving engine company. I'm going to do my 360 follow-up report. Firecom from 39th Command. 360s complete. There's 1 story from Charlie, no basement, no change to the IIP. We're still offensive, and accountability is engine 72 on alpha. Now I'm assigning engine that goes level 1, support engine 72 on alpha for fire control. They're going to move forward. They're going to help to build that line, bring tools and equipment to check for extension, and they're going to assist in fire control with 5 people. Next engine company, pull a line to alpha off engine 72 for on deck. Next engine company, support the FDC. Let me know when you're ready to pump to it. Next company, go to the fire control room. Battalion chief arrives on scene. 39th Command, Battalion 61. I understand you're on alpha for fire control. Engine 73 is on alpha for fire control. Engine 68 is at the FDC. Medic 72 is on deck alpha, and engine 69 is at the fire control room. If that's correct, give me a CAN report. I say, that's correct, we're on the alpha side about to make entry. What do I do if I'm IC2 and I notice this? My job as IC2 is to confirm the initial attack plan and the strategy, and be the overall keeper of the strategy, right? So if I see something that gives me concern, like fire through a roof, change in smoking conditions, I might even see this and not like that, and the risk that this entails for going into a Lowe's, and I might want to change the strategy there too. That's the responsibility of the battalion chief that arrives to assume command. So how does that play out? All the firefighters are getting ready to go to work. IC2 sees this. So I would take command and say, Firecom from Battalion 72, I'm going to be assuming 39th Street Command. We're still in the offensive strategy. Hold the alarm. And I would look at this and go, I don't like that. Engine 7-2 from command. Looks like we have a change in conditions. They're going to have you withdraw from the building. Engine 7-3 from command. Withdraw from the building. Medic 7-2 from command. We're going to change strategies. Do not enter the building. Firecom from 39th Command. Emergency tones. They're going to set off emergency tones to get everybody's attention on the fire ground. Once that happens, I'm going to tell all the companies that are on the fire ground, all fire ground units from 39th Avenue Command, we're changing strategies from offensive to a defensive strategy. All companies withdraw from the building. I repeat, changing strategies from offensive to defensive. All companies withdraw from the building. I'm going to verify that that has been received by Firecom because they're going to repeat that information verbatim. That's all done with emergency tones. Now, this is where we talked about the company officers and the medic unit's responsibilities. Those companies are to get their own PARs and be accountable for their own crews. So if I'm Engine 7-2 officer, I'm going to make sure I have all of my crew, and I'm going to withdraw from the building and get outside of the collapse zone. If I'm Engine 7-3 supporting and I'm the officer, I'm going to make sure I have accountability for Engine 7-3 crew. We've withdrawn from the building. We're outside the collapse zone. If I'm the medic unit, me and my medic partner are going to look at each other and say, we're par. Let's get outside of the collapse zone. The reason for this is we don't want PARs being given out over the air in case something happens and someone needs to get on the radio quickly. Chief Kent.
Jeff, if I could add something.
Yes.
When you're the first in company officer, your PAR includes your pump operator. It seems like a no-brainer, but there's been fires where that has not factored into a complete company. So make sure your PAR, if you're first in, includes that the pump operator stuck at the pump panel. So.
Excellent point. Yeah, we can't forget about the pump operators. That happens frequently. Good point. So now PARs are driven by the incident commander. When IC2 has confirmed that people have acknowledged his radio traffic and have withdrawn from the building, they'll say, all fireground companies stand by for a roll call. When you hear that, that means that you're about to be called to see if you are PAR. So you will then hear the command officer, IC2, say, Engine 7-2 from command, PAR report. And then they'll say, Engine 7-2 is on the alpha side, we're PAR with 3. Okay? Your location and how many people are in your crew. If you're not PAR at the time of the call, you are permitted to say stand by if you believe that you have your personnel, they're just not standing right next to you. Then you have a moment to look for them, and the company officer or the incident commander will then return back to contact you again once they've gone through the roll call once. If you're still not PAR, then what is that? It's a mayday, right? And so the reason we don't all arbitrarily offer up our PARs is so if that does happen, whoever has that issue has complete autonomy on the radio. So we're not going to risk anything for this building that has conditions that are put firefighters in grave danger. We will make calculated decisions to attack and resolve the fire problem in an overhaul position. And by overhaul, I mean the sprinkler system has knocked the fire down, and we're going to go in there with a hand line to distribute water from a different position to overhaul the fire and remove the contents. We will do that with good fireground information. We'll take our time, give clear assignments, use the TLO model, give good CAN reports, and that's how we're going to attack big box fires. When we get to the drill ground next week, we're going to run you guys through multiple scenarios of how this plays out. So please watch this in its entirety, come up with any questions, bring them to drill, and we hope to set the plays in place so when this does happen, it's just another day at the office.